arguments are dead. There's no talking these people out of their positions. And so I hear people say, we need to do more journalism, we need to write more books, or we need to nope. It's not going to matter. This is now a street fight. What do you have any response to all that I've just dumped on you?
Yeah, I do. I mean, there's a lot there. I do think that there are some people that can be still persuaded of things, not the kind of economic arguments that we've been making, not the kind of social science arguments that we've been making. I mean, this stuff is important, but it's got to go. But there are people, maybe they voted for Biden, that are decent, that see something is wrong with the country, or see something is wrong with their children due to this kind of education. And this is part of the problem of any commercial republic, which is exactly what you said. These are busy people, and they're supposed to be governing themselves, but their life is devoted to commerce, and the country makes you do that. But that paradigm works only when you have honest political leadership that gives these people cover. And so I do think that an intelligent state governor can start to speak about these things and can cultivate a very broad base against what you just described. There are people who are scared to speak. There are people who are just too decent to believe these kinds of racialist theories, and are too decent, by the way, to say, I'm going to harm my child by teaching my child to despise themselves and be a sacrificial lamb. So, in other words, I think that there are reachable people. We just have not been using the language that works on that. We have not been speaking to these real needs partly out of cowardice. Nobody wants to get embroiled in this. And the whole administrative state, the press, the interwebs are all set up to clamp down and destroy you. But the time is coming to make these kinds of political arguments. So I don't actually think that it's hopeless.
It takes a sovereign individual to speak these, heresies in our current culture. And for better, I would have said maybe for better or worse before, but I've been canceled. I'm now uncancelable. I'm happy to pick up the mantle and talk about these things. It's funny. I came out of sort of a small corner of the internet, and now I've gotten much more of a mainstream audience. And I'm talking about things that our sort of niche audience has been talking about for 10 years. And now I talk about them to sort of more of a normie audience. And it's like, whoa, these are ideas that some people had not ever heard or had articulated in such a way. And I'm happy to carry that forward. State and local power, 100%. I mean, you can take over a county or a town or even your state legislature and have influence there. There's not huge lobbying money. There's not the huge entrenched interests. They're much more responsive to their constituents. And the state and local areas are places where we should certainly 100% make some inroads.
But that is absolutely essential. And that's where citizens look. The nation is very big. It's like you're more connected to your locality, your kids' schools, and your state. And that's where citizens can really be emphatic and have this kind of salvation mentality about it. But I will add one thing, that the right, the progress on the freedom of speech is a really interesting example of what's wrong with the right. First, it was just defend free speech on campuses. It has gotten so bad that now they are merely begging to be heard on campuses. And yet they have changed nothing about how they go about things. Once you see that what we have done has not worked and it has only gotten worse, a new horizon opens up to you. And that horizon has to also do with the kinds of arguments that are acceptable. So I'll just give you an example. Why on the right has no major politician forced the left to say exactly what they stand for? What they want is an oligarchic tyranny of the marginalized oppressing the so-called oppressor. They should be made to say it point blank. This is what you want. And they must, you say that the marginalized, by virtue of their marginalization, are morally superior because they understand justice in a way that the oppressors don't, and they're intellectually superior because they can understand all of the white so-called superstructures, privilege, whereas the oppressor cannot understand anything about them. That's called cultural appropriation. That means that you think that there are biological categories of people that are fundamentally superior to others, and it is justice to let them rule over the oppressor and to punish. Make them say it, force them. That is a wake-up moment. Trump in terms of policy, maybe some successes, it's hard to know, a lot of things will be rolled back. But in terms of opening up what it is possible to say on very sensible things, like immigration and trade, the next person must take that to the next step. And he must be less abrasive, polite, just crisp, rational arguments. This is what the left wants. All of the evidence suggests it. And that's not what America is. There will be a great deal of decent bipartisan support for that. And that's, I mean, you use the word red pilling. It's the scales falling from the eyes. It's the seeing more clearly as to what the stakes are. And that's where our rhetoric should go, making crystal clear the stakes.
Donald Trump was like a carpet bomber, and what we need is a sniper. We need an assassin, somebody who's just a cold, not cold, but like so focused and willing to play the game in order to achieve the results. Right? That was I understand, and I felt the urge to just blow up the system in 2016. I understand, I felt it, and that's what Trump was. He was a bomb that we all launched into Washington, D.C. But what we need in the future, as you say, someone who can stand on the shoulders of those ideas, but then do it in a way that's just much more lethal, and with the end goal of affecting a specific change. One thing that John Robb and our guys in the Liminal Order we talk about quite a bit is the new quadrants of warfare. Fourth generation, fifth generation warfare have brought us into new quadrants where instead of just strategic, tactical, and operational, you now have also the moral framework is in there. And so the strategic moral framework, or the strategic moral quadrant, is really where most of all this stuff is playing out right now. And I saw I think it was New Hampshire, where and I could be wrong on this, where they proposed a law that would ban discrimination on the basis of right, silly, of race, gender, sexual identity, whatever, banning it. And it forced the radicals and the progressives in New Hampshire to vote against it. Right. So I found that to be a fantastic jujitsu move. We need better mimetic package design. And that thing represented excellent mimetic package design in the sense that if you take the contrary to our stated position, you look like an ass. And this is an effective way of unearthing what they really stand for. Propose a law that on its face is totally common sense. Oh, there's Rosie making her daily appearance in the podcast. Propose a law that on its face makes total perfect common sense. And that if you object to it, it reveals exactly what your intentions are. And these are the kind of jujitsu moves that I think that we need to make. Is there anything like that you can think of offhand? Because I believe that that's a vector that should be really explored.
Well, two things come to mind. One is what the Trump administration did on Princeton. I thought was very clever and morally good. The president of Princeton says we're a racist institution. Okay, let's investigate it. We're against racism. We want the equal protection of law for all people. And you are saying that your institution is responsible for it and that you are perpetuating it. So let's investigate it. And if it turns out that there's no racism, then you're a liar. And that this is a fraud. And I think that these kinds of call-outs are really important. What it'll turn out, I mean, that study has been canceled, but what it'll turn out is that, as Heather McDonald has documented, these kind of white elite liberals are begging people of color, begging them to come into any positions. They're begging to fork over all kind of policy power to them. So these kinds of frauds should be called out. And number two, rhetorically, it's like, look, as these kinds of anti-discrimination laws expand, we should force them to say who they are protecting these marginalized people from. And we should say that you are self-consciously creating a caste system in this country, and show everybody that. Your child will be discriminated against if he tries to apply to Harvard or to any job. Your child is a second-class citizen in this country because despite himself, he is an oppressor based solely on the color of his skin, and he demands humiliation and subjugation. So these are the kinds of words that we must be uttering now. And it's just. We're not just saying this out of anger or vengeance. It's justice for there to be equality under the laws. Otherwise, who wants to live in that kind of country where there's no equality under the laws?
It's not the veil of ignorance. Boy, the philosopher's name is escaping me. Pardon me?
Schopenhauer.
Where you design, you have to design a political system without knowing what your position in it is going to be.
Rorty.
Yeah. So it seems to me that these folks on the left aren't even considering that, aren't even considering that perspective. They want to build a system in which power is concentrated in the hands of the powerful, and that they can apply it willy nilly, and they think that it will always just be, it'll always just be okay, and it won't get turned against them at any point in the future. I think a demographic that is susceptible in a good way, open, is these ignorant foot soldiers, what I call them. They're just like regular folks who hear the idea of Black Lives Matter, sounds good, who can look at slavery and be like, yeah, slavery sucked. And who can think, hey, yeah, maybe, we should fix some of this stuff. Okay, great. But what they don't know is that this is a secret weapon, right? It's a Trojan horse that has contained within it the end result, which was accidentally stated out loud in the Smithsonian papers last year, that all white people need to yield positions of power to people of color and other marginalized people. That is the stated end goal. It's like people will call me a conspiracy theorist or some crazy tinfoil hat nutter for just simply reading the documents that they have produced where they state exactly what their goals are. Then the Smithsonian posts it to their websites. Schools download this information. They hand it out to their students and to their parents. And then all of a sudden you're at home and your daughter's like, Daddy, I'm white. I need to yield positions of power to people of color because I'm white. And this is the ignorant foot soldier. These are the people that we need to address. And this is the optimist in me, a little naive, is that I feel like if I could just talk to these people for just a little bit, let's just let me lay the whole thing out for you, because actually laying the whole thing out for them it's a huge thing. It's not something that you can discuss in one conversation. You have to have, this is, for me, this is a lifetime of experience and education to come to these conclusions and to see the evidence without denying it. Even coming up through what we call the manosphere, writing about masculine and feminine issues and radical feminism. Even I was in denial about the institutional capture of radical feminism and what the end goal was. It took me some time to actually really, truly accept it and then move on and want to make some change about it. And it's truly the Kavanaugh hearings where the language of radical feminism rang out in the Senate Judiciary hearings and tried to reshape the face of the Supreme Court. That was when I was like, okay. Even I can't resist this any further. And so this education process is going to take a long time. Now, we don't have the luxury of putting people through a 6-month seminar to have them come out on the other side. What we need are, and this is going to sound silly, but it's not, we need memes and images that trigger an empathetic reaction in people that they may not be able to articulate. But when they see it, they instantly feel some sort of aversion. They're like, oh, that is not right. So the power of memes should not be understated in this encounter, in this struggle. And we actually really need to focus on, call it like empathetic triggers, like visual empathetic triggers, if you will. In your papers, as I've been reading, and I'm going to do this a little bit of a screen share here. This is a great essay that was posted on The American Mind, which is the publication of the Claremont Institute, where you write about a new conservatism must emerge. And in there, you mentioned there's a line that I really, sort of caught my eye. Is that the end result of this whole thing we're going through right now is either going to be tyranny or resistance. How far are we away from like a formalized acknowledgement that we need a formalized resistance? Because the tyranny is here, my friend.
Yeah. Well, look, there are different ways to resist. You mentioned one before, which is creating men's groups, men's societies. That is a form of resistance. But that resistance can obviously be ratcheted up. Now, I'm an immigrant to this country. I really love this country, and it's terrible to see the state that it's in today. There are huge swaths of people that are on our side, and but they need political leadership, and they need real backing. And this is why I think the game is in the States. There were a lot of dissidents in the Soviet Union who resisted internally, but that meant that they went to jail for wrong thing, or they just sat quietly in their apartments and wrote things and had small circles of friends. I take it you're not really for that latter option. You want to live in a free country. You want to be able to rule yourself. And so that means at a basic first step level, organization in the states, so that the governors, the state legislatures, understand what it is they're doing. Their goal is not just to attract Goldman Sachs to their state to lift up the GDP. Their goal is to make those states independent from woke world and to be able to resist it and to use those levers of power. And that kind of leadership is also needed for average citizens to see, like, look, these arguments are true and they have promise and we believe in them. And we will do our own part to vehemently defend our neighborhoods, our space, our localities.